Hello and welcome to another tutorial. This time round, I'll be showing you how to make a Kahn and Neek type track using Ableton Live. I've decided to split these videos into two shorter installments because this means I can focus on certain aspects like music theory and sound design in more depth. The first video will cover theory, pre-production, and sound design and initial composition. The second video will cover further composition, structure, and arrangement, as well as some pre-mix stuff like automation. Unlike my other how-to track making videos, this isn't really based upon one single track, although the vibe of my track is probably most like Damascus, which is a track that I will reference throughout. I'll try and mention which Kahn and Neek tracks I'm referencing where and when I reference them, and I'll link them in the description as well. I'll leave any Serum presets used in this video in the description for free, along with some of the MIDI as well. And don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. And if you're keen to see more content like this, then the best way you can support the channel is by purchasing one of my preset or sample packs, also listed in the description. I've chosen to analyze a track with a good amount of melodic content. This is because if I want to make things more melodic when I'm composing, I want it to feel authentic. I've therefore chosen the track 16mm, which is a Kahn and Neek dub. What I found is that 16mm is in G Phrygian dominant. The notes of this scale are G, A flat, B, C, D, E flat, and F, and then back to G. These are the notes from the C harmonic minor scale, which is played C, D, E flat, F, G, A flat, B. But here it's rooted in G, which is the 5th degree of the C harmonic minor scale. Rooting a track in G is better for bass music, so this makes sense. Kahn's track AMK with Komodo and Gantz is in F Phrygian dominant, which makes sense because it's a common key in Indian music and that song uses an Indian sample. I'm going to use the Phrygian dominant scale MIDI effects and put it on every melodic channel. So any note I play on my keyboard will be within that scale. But my track is going to be in E Phrygian dominant. And you can see that I've done this with all the melodic instruments with this Phrygian dominant scale in E. As a note, most of these samples come from Splice. So for the kick drum, I'm going to use bassism for the sub part of the kick, and I'm going to tune that later on. And for the high part, I've chosen this quite overdriven kick sample. Once it's in the mix, I feel it will punch through well. I tried to tune this kick using span, but it was already an A, which is in E Phrygian dominant, so I wasn't going to change anything. For the hats and high percussion, I have a shaker, an open 9/9 hi-hat, a tambourine, a lasery type sound, and a closed hi-hat. This is close to my standard grime hat rack setup. Kahn and Neek use these sounds in various tracks, although the selection is quite close to Damascus. All the samples are on one voice, meaning that only one of them will trigger at a time, and I've also put them in the same choke group in the I/O settings here. The samples have also been panned in the control section to either the left or the right side. I've also EQ'd out some of the low frequencies using the Ableton stock EQ. I've got this clap rack. In this case, I'm just using this clap. Quite simple, maybe a bit kind of 909-y, but I feel it will work well in the context of Kahn and Neek's music. I've got this lasery sound. I already have one laser type sound in the high percussion rack, but I've got another one here, which I've panned slightly to one side. Kahn and Neek are very fond of these types of sounds, so I've got a few more. You also may have heard the dub style echo, which is an important stylistic feature of Kahn and Neek's music and dubstep generally. I'll show you what I've used to create this when I go over the sends at the end of the pre-production phase, but I've used it on all of the effects and some of the melodic elements as well. We've got another sort of lasery chant here. If you weren't aware, you can essentially make any sound a bit lasery by using pitch modulation. I've done this here using the sampler in the cell of a drum rack. If I turn it on and off, you can hear the difference. We've also got this one here, which also has some pitch modulation on and has been pitched down by 12 semitones. And now onto the sample-based stuff. So we've got this impact. I stretched this using the texture algorithm. You can see if I've zoomed out here, it's a very long sample. Damascus seems to have quite a few kind of textured impacts. So this is what I was trying to imitate. We've got this vocal reverse, or a few different vocal reverses. That one's not a vocal. It sounds more like a reversed bell. These have been tuned using span. And again, this is just because I've heard this sort of vocally texture used a lot in Kahn and Neek's tracks. We've also got this dubby reverse. Bit more dissonant sounding. I've used span to tune it. We've got some more. That's again a bit more of a kind of sinister dubby reverse. We got this reverse glass smash, and the glass smash is a bit of a classic garage or grime sound. Ambience is very important in dub influenced music, which is why I've got so many different effects. I've got these one shots as well, which are quite well known and are from a jungle sample pack. I think Kahn and Neek do a better job of sourcing unique vocal samples, but these fit the vibe well, so I'm going to use them. I've pitched them down so they sound a bit more menacing, which you can see here. For the second one shot, I've actually got delay on the channel. This is the space echo emulation that I'm using, which I will talk about a bit more in a bit. But the intensity is very high. And the one that I've got on the send is a bit lower because I wanted this one to have a longer tail and I wanted it to sound more ambient. All these basses are monophonic, which means only one bass note is triggered at a time, as having multiple bass notes triggering simultaneously sounds horrible. The first two patches don't have any sub bass and are likely to feature in the intro of the track. So first we have this sawtooth bass. As mentioned, it is sawtooth based with the unison detune increased to 7 and a low pass filter with the filter's cutoff being modulated by 2 LFOs. And you can hear there's some delay applied on a send as well. We've got this ambient grime bass. This patch is very similar to my grime bass tutorial, which I'll put on the top left of the screen now. We've got a square wave pitched down 2 octaves. And again, the unison is going to be increased to 7. I've added a bit of delay on the channel too. We've also split the frequency bands using EQ3, and I've used a bit of overdrive on the low mid frequencies. Just to emphasize those. And there's a note on the outer space plugin as well. It's on wet only, which means we're essentially only hearing the delay. And the high and low frequencies have been filtered out, adding to the sense that the sound is distant. For the rest of the bass instruments, I've used sine waves for the sub-frequencies using an EQ splitting technique. One of my tutorials will appear in the top right corner of the screen, which shows you how to do this. I've also compressed the sine wave subs for consistency, as I always do. There'll be some overdrive applied to either the mid or the top band, or sometimes both. So the patch that you just heard is inspired by Got My Ting by Kahn and Neek. This is almost a bass line type patch, but it's quite subtle. It uses FM synthesis, so if I turn off oscillator B, you can hear the difference that the FM synthesis makes. You can see again that it's a unison square wave with an LFO on envelope modes, modulating the cutoff of a low pass filter. I've used this FM from B knob to introduce oscillator B, which has had its level turned down and has been pushed up by an octave and is also unison. I've also applied some overdrive to the mid frequencies just to emphasize them, which I showed you just now. You can hear that it's going to help them cut through the mix a little bit more. The next three bass patches are variations on a theme. They're all square wave based, and like the Grime Square FX bass I showed earlier, which is this one. The first is a deeper sub, which just has a simple filter applied with no modulation being applied to the cutoff. The second has a filter which is slowly being modulated by LFO1 in an upwards direction. And you can see that it's a triangle shape, so it comes back down. And the final bass is just kind of a straight up grind bass, no filter, and just a little bit of overdrive applied to the mid frequencies just to accentuate them a little bit. The tutorial that I linked on the screen earlier for this patch is identical more or less to this one. In fact, you can see it says Grime Square Tutorial. We have this Grime Square lead. Again, I have a tutorial for this sound, which I will put on the screen. I've added some saturation and bit crushing in an audio effect track with the nasty high frequencies removed. You might also be able to hear that I filtered out some of the high frequencies using an auto filter at the end of the chain. This is a similar sound. And again, I have a tutorial for this, which I'll put on the screen. It utilizes an arpeggiator to create a video game style effect, and a similar sound appears on Damascus. Again, we have the saturation and the bit crushing. Then we've got two different versions of this same Omnisphere preset. It's called Filtered Strings Orchestra, and I just thought it fit the vibe pretty well. In Damascus, it's difficult to tell whether Kahn and Neek are using strings or vocal samples, so I decided to use both. Just as a note, with these leads and pads, they're being sent to a ping pong delay on the send, which is C, and then we have a dub delay on D. I'm going to explain these in a moment. In terms of the sends, I have a short reverb, nothing fancy. It's just the guitar rig small club preset, because this is club music, so I'm trying to reflect that space. If I want to give any sound a longer tail, then I will use a delay. We have this ping pong delay. As you can see, the low frequencies have been filtered out. For the delay itself, you can see the feedback's not particularly high. We've got it on 2 and we've got them linked. The ping pong mode is turned on here as well, obviously. And the dry wet is turned up to 100. And then I've got isotope alloy 2 here, which I'm just using to narrow the stereo field and ensure that the ping pong delay is more monocompatible. We have this dub delay, which I've alluded to a lot here. I'm using a dub style delay emulation plugin based on the Roland Space Echo called Outer Space by Audio Thing, and I've tweaked the dub preset. This plugin is inexpensive at 69 euros, and I'd recommend it if you're making atmospheric dubstep, since you need a good tape delay emulation. I'll leave a link to this plugin in the description, but I am in no way affiliated with Audio Thing. In Damascus, I think Kahn and Neek use a couple of different settings for their delays, but I'm just going to use this one for the initial composition and then potentially add more later on when I'm refining the track. I'll also draw your attention to the groove pool on the left, which has one of the two-step garage grooves from Ableton with settings that I know will work well for the style, and I'll be applying this mainly to the drums and percussion. And yeah, so let's get started. This video will focus on making a 32 bar loop for the first drop of the track, whereas part 2 will cover its completion. We're starting at 140 BPM and we'll turn the metronome on and we'll start with a simple 4 bar loop. We'll begin by programming in the kick. Next, the clap, hitting on the third beat of the bar because that's very common in dubstep. Then we'll have a little alternative here. Turn the metronome off. And we can start programming the hi-hats and other high percussion now. We're going to use a 16th note grid because this is ideal for grime because we won't be wanting divisions any smaller than that. And I'm just going to spend a bit of time tweaking this high percussion pattern until I get it to where I want. So after a bit of experimentation, I'm pretty happy with this pattern. As you might be able to see, I've applied the groove from the groove pool to the pattern so that it has more of a natural feel and a sense of swing. And I've also applied it to the clap pattern so that everything locks in really nicely. I can now start to program in the bass. So I'm going to start with the grime square bass. We're going to go from E and we'll add the diva sub as well. So this is feeling a bit sparse and I'm going to fill it up in terms of effects. I think I'm going to add a little strings melody just so there is more going on in the track. Now's the time to extend this section out to an 8 bar section. And yeah, so that is our basic 8 bar loop. Again, as I said, I'm going to fill it out more, but at this stage, I'd rather get the B section done. I think I'm going to work in 8 bar sections. So the B section will be a variation of what's happening here with maybe a few different elements. So for the B section, we will start again with the kick drum. I'm going to choose an even grimier clap pattern utilizing a Kahn and Neek style rhythm. Again, make sure I apply this groove. I'm just going to duplicate the hat rack MIDI over and start utilizing the laser sound in the rack. Think we might need to add another shaker here. Now we can start programming the bass in for the B section. We can start adding the dubsteppy wobble. Now we can add in this bass as well. Control or Command Shift M to create a new MIDI region. I'm now going to start programming in a strings melody for the B section. The A section strings melody is quite legato, so I think I'll go for something more staccato for the B section. And we'll use a little low note here too. We'll edit this bass note as well. So yeah, that's the basic B section. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to add some of the effects and just fill the sections out a little bit more so they're a bit more ambient and so that there's more of a sense of depth within the track. So I'm now going back to the A section to do the effects arrangement. So we can start with this impact. I'm also going to add this little lasery sound on 16th notes at the end of the second bars. Going to add this little reverse. Now we can move on to arranging the effects in the B section, but let's see how the A section going into the B section sounds first. We can add the impacts as we did in the A section. We can bring in this little vocal delay reverse sample at the end of the B section. Turn these down a little bit. So now what I've done is I've essentially got the A section, the B section. This is 16 bars long, as you can see. And I'm going back to the A section, and then a variation of the B section without the melody, but with another element instead. I've added these laser chants. See, there's a little one here. Generally, in the B section, you can see that they're on the third beat. So it's just that first clap sounds a bit kind of more airy and textural. We've also added these quick reverses just to the B section. Again, just for a bit more texture. The glass reverse here as well, I think. Maybe I'll move this back. I think I took this out. You can also probably hear this little ESCI square video game wirely type sounds, which I've put in the A section. And then in the variation of the B section, which is the idea is that it's then sort of going to go to a sparser breakdown. I've added the grimy effects lead and some of the pan-fluty sound. I also added a few more of the vocal reverses here to give the repetition of the B section a more ambient feel, because that's what the track is progressing towards. So that's it for this video. Next time, we'll start by building the intro and go from there. Thanks so much for watching and supporting the channel, and I'll see you next time for part 2.